with Spirit of Matter, and we're about to open another Mars Day where I'm at, southern Israel. And I opened this morning with Mars Wisdom on a Mars Day. So yesterday was Moon Day. I woke up with wisdom around mirrors, but I was doing more internal work around the house, preparing some great food. And today I want to talk about what I woke up with, and that is Mars Wisdom on a Mars Day. So Mars is stationing to go direct, and I woke up with this joke. So usually when a planet stations to go direct, we say it's always darkest before the dawn. Well, here the dawn is that Mars is going direct in Gemini. And why is that a joke? For those of you who do not know astrology and look at my videos to learn more about astrology and the world in general, um, the essence of Mars, um, the way I see it, the way I've been introduced to it, and here I talk about really the esoterics. Okay, so there is truth to some people who will say many other things because they observe mundane reality and how it plays out, and there is essence. So what does a good pure um, Mars that works well come to do? It comes to sever ties with the unjust. Okay, so the role of Mars of severing ties with the unjust also applies to the role of Mars as solving problems. Okay, Mars, if you have an altar, so Mars, you can put some things that are broken, or put the altar of Mars over a place that is broken in your house. So A, that Mars can fix it, and B, Mars has something to do. You put Mars energy where it needs to be done. For example, people with Mars in the seventh house might have to play the role of severing ties with the unjust, being one-on-one person they're with. So if they want Mars to work well, they need to give Mars something to fix and something to do within the scope of working with that other person, within the scope of the seventh house. If I'm not mistaken, the seventh house is also the living room, so you could put some pictures in the living room or something like that um, to remedy that. But to intentional, the best would be an altar to Mars. So as Mars is stationing to go direct, it's gathering it is both gathering the think tank it did throughout the very long retrograde around Gemini, and whatever Gemini is in your house, is in your chart. And that depends on the house system you've been working with. It can be two houses if it's Placidus, it can be one house if it's whole sign houses, the system I work with currently. I'm not blind to Placidus. I will sometimes call it in when I see it useful, but basically whole sign houses would mean the house is the sign. So you would need to see where it's happening. In that house, you've had Mars, I think it was either 7 or 9 months. It's like very long going through that house, going back and forth. Okay, reaching to the, I don't remember, 24th, 25th degree of Gemini before going all the way up to the 8th degree, which is where it's at now, and where it's going to station retrograde. I spoke about the sextile to Chiron in a Mars world sign. So there's definitely a wound healing about your role in severing ties with the unjust or with what you deem as unjust. And just saying that's no longer, but there are two, Mars is ruling two signs. One is the traditional ruler of Scorpio, and Scorpio is still water that penetrates deep. So there is stillness, there is the ability to meditate on something, there's the ability to go through an inner transformation of changing something from the core, of transmuting energy on an energy level. It's very subtle, very yin. And Aries, which is the head of the baby. Okay, it is the ignition. Okay, if you have a car, the ignition would be Aries. Okay, that the light a match. Okay, you light a match, or you start the engine. Then the initial energy that it takes, the explosive power. Okay, if you do fitness, the explosive power that it takes is Mars Aries. Okay, so it's impulsive, and that could be good or bad. Okay, to start a plane, to get the engines to roll, you need that explosive energy, and later you maintain a level of energy. But if you have, let's say, a natural Mars in Aries, then you might be constantly serving as the explosive role, or the explosive power role, and that can create a lot of conflict in your life. Yes, you have to know how to divert this energy to get that essence. And Chiron in Aries tells us that there was a wound around doing that Mars. And with Mars spending so long in Gemini, there was a wound around how to go about doing that Mars in Gemini. Um, Something, Mars was trying to do something, but the initiation, the starting, the engine roll, it was not igniting, or it was igniting at the wrong people, or it was something with Gemini's framing. Okay, how were things framed? Somebody's sense of self was wounded, and perhaps that was their motivation to fix it or to do something, something technological, something in the media, something about an argument, something about children, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, this young people, or something to do with trade, with business, with agreements. Okay, something was not being done correctly, somebody's sense of self was wounded, and Mars is aiming to fix that. Um, so on a mundane level, I read a beautiful article yesterday about the non-Europeocentric armed conflicts in ongoing in the world, and it seems to be that the main player surrounding these conflicts is China, but not only. And the way that we dedicate the spotlight to something, and we don't scan over the many things that are around, not just the Middle East, not just Europe, and the Middle East as a junction between the East and the West, but also other types of things that at least tending to them, at least broadcasting them, at least writing about them, at least talking about them, whether it's Taiwan or even Afghanistan, um, or the entire layer of countries around Asia, some desiring for sovereignty, desiring to break free, desiring to exist as a whole, and not as slaves to something. So that is ongoing, and we should be paying attention to that, especially as the nodes are turning towards a Mars-ruled sign, with Rahu turning towards a Mars-ruled sign. Okay, we had Ketu leaving Scorpio, and now Ketu will be leaving Libra. So the scales of justice as means to the scales of justice as the Libra scales, as the Venusian mercurial figure that is savvy with the rules, and fixes the rules, is something we will depart from for the next 9 years, during the next 2-3 years. So So Mars will have a lot, like Mars will have a lot to do with that, because the way we depart from that will be with Rahu in a Mars ruled sign. That is the ignition of something. Okay, yet another context, because within the 9 years, the coming 9 years, Uranus will also turn to Gemini. We talked about it a lot. And so we need to understand that the essence of Mars is to severe ties with the unjust. And Mars, while Mars can be extremely diplomatic, it will be tactically diplomatic, and um, it governs the type of actions that change unjust rules as well. So there is why Mars can sometimes be connected with that which we see as negating the rules of society. Okay, for example, it's a very concrete. Now we're dealing with Mercury, children, blah 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 blah. Okay, so framing. Okay, Mars is the one responsible for cancel culture of people who say that the person who was the child in the relationship, having less power in the relationship, at the workplace, at home, at whatever, is partially responsible for their molestation. Okay, whether it's by their parents or by Bill Clinton. Okay, so Mars action will cancel anybody who says that. He says, no, I'm not giving a voice to the molester. I want to hear the voice of the children. Okay, I want to listen to the children. Okay. Mars is also the one shooting down systems, shooting down social media, shooting down mass media. Well, with mass media is more Aquarius, but still, shooting down those who should take a picture that come to misframe the victim. Okay, so it's so for example, if somebody cancels somebody for speaking up against abuse, Mars is the one responsible for shooting down that who did the canceling. And so depending on what framework we live within society, we might consider Mars more or less violent or more or less in alignment with what we believe to be true. Because Mars' role is simply to sever ties with the unjust, and it will do so by any means necessary. If something is not right, it will fix it. Okay? And with Mars in Gemini, it's an act of speech. It's an act of speech. Mars adheres not to the rules man-made, and this is something we need to also remember. Mars adheres not to the rules man-made, but to the rules that are protective of those that did not receive protection. Okay, in agriculture, what is Mars? Okay, Martian herb is cinnamon, that is both a fertilizer, but it is also pesticide. If you sprinkle cinnamon around your plant, okay, Mars is also involved with turmeric. This is my belief. It's not only Mars, it's also the moon, but because turmeric is a toner, is an anti-inflammatory. So again, turmeric is both an fertilizer. It enriches the soil. It allows it to absorb the fluids and to maintain good moisture. And that is why it's also related with the moon, and maybe some would relate it with Jupiter. Because of its tonal anti-inflammatory role, I associate turmeric also with Mars. Okay, not only, but also. And if you scatter turmeric around your plant, then you're both doing it good and throwing the pests away. Okay, some pests are good for the plant, but will not throw those away, and that's the good about it being a tonic. But the pests that could eat your plant, that could endanger your plant, especially if you're growing it separately from other plants, then turmeric can assist you in tackling that. Okay, so Mars governs, when you do a Mars talisman, you work also in doing pest control. Okay, so pest control is very good. Vinegar is a very Martian. Okay, it does that thing which was sitting, basically. It was sitting, it's simmering. It was sitting, simmering. That is a Mars action. And Mars does take aggression for those of you who do magic, who do banishment. Okay, I know a lot of you will be seeking or have been seeking help, therapy, and then this pill is gone, that pill is gone. So you could either run into certain people who claim to be good in interfering in your energy or offer you all kinds of alternative things that sometimes are great and sometimes are not. Or you could be going to your, to your psychologist, to your social worker, and they could be playing with stuff that you don't know about, all the while supporting a scientific paradigm that is materialistically dogmatic, aside from taking emotions into account. And you have no way to turn to, so you have to even protect yourself from those who supposedly come to help you. Okay, that want to take away children, to put them in all kinds of ventures and all kinds of places that make money for the state or the states or whatever organizations. So this is also happening, and Mars' role as severing ties with the unjust is also about magic. So when you do banishment magic, protection magic, sometimes a part of the right is to take your anger, to take your assertiveness, and speak. So garlic is also a good herb for that. Is speak. When you speak to that garlic or speak to whatever you do in the right, and say any spirit, any person, any being in spirit and in matter that even thinks to attempt something at me, at my family, at my loved ones who are right with me, I call that to be abolished on the spot. I call that to be terminated on the spot. I return this energy to sender before it even sent me that energy, so they can get the time to correct, to repent, to correct their ways, and if needed be, to be absorb the energy that they are themselves sending back to the world. Okay, and I was being very diplomatic. Okay, I'm a Jupiterian rising, but nonetheless, I'm the Scorpionic Mars. So, so Mars is used to protect, which which is not receiving the just protection of the law. Okay, that is also something we need to pay attention to. Those who are not protected by the law, and as we come with the nodes, come to Aries with the E, the asteroid Aries within Aries now, and having an eclipse on that in April, then definitely the Mars role here would be to protect those who are not being protected by the law. So you can think of refugees, you can think of refugees from all those armed conflicts, you can think of the children of a refugee family that are being abused by the culture of a region or by the culture that they're reaching to. Okay? You can think about all these things. You can think about self-identity. So self-identity can also be a gender identity, and it can also be the many things that go into an identity. Okay? I am an astrologer. I am an aromatherapist. Okay? So severing ties with the unjust in Aries will also be done by starting something new. Okay, starting that which is just, igniting the role of something. Mercury is media, it's children, it's the business, it's transportation. So what type of transportation? How do we think about public transportation? It's also society. So Mercury has been gathering, and now what happens now, and why is this stationing phase so important and so challenging? Because Mercury is going to be retrograde when Mars turns direct. Okay? Mercury is still going to be retrograde. We just entered its retrograde motion. But as far as Mars is concerned, there are two things happening right now. One, gathering information or assessing, sifting, sorting all the information that we've gathered so far and coming into alignment with the path of action and gathering the energy, the seethingness, the simmering that it takes to go, 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 go until Mars leaves Gemini. Okay? Culminating the 7 to 9 months period. And a part of which Mercury will be retrograde. And a part of which by the end, but reaching the 20, probably 23rd, 24th degree of Gemini, there will be a Neptune square. So there's something Mars is trying to do, and this is very important because we need to understand what's going to happen. Two things happen. One, Mercury is still retrograde where? In Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign that rules the regulations, the agriculture, the hierarchy, the ganze Geschäft, okay, the mountains, anything where you climb something, climbing the ladder, climbing the mountain, climbing the corporate ladder, institutional bodies, the hierarchies in agriculture, which plants what grows first, what grows later, the order of things, and sometimes there has to be order and regulation. So which order and regulation is good for us, which is not. So in the beginning, Mars is going to station direct, Mars is going to go direct, but it still contends. Let's go to January 12th. I think I have it still open, but do I have it still open? I think not. Nope. But I'm going to do it with another window and take a look again at January 12th. Astro Tools. So we have aspect retrograde tables. So let's just do the annual calendar of 2023. That will probably give me what I need. Not ingresses, transits, retrogrades. And let's go to Mars. So Mars turning direct on January 12th. And there it is with Mercury still retrograde. Okay, so back to today's chart. We have just 5 minutes before we welcome Mars. So for those of you who are doing rites and rituals and are living in around the Middle East, then that would be a good time to get your Mars prayers, welcome Mars, or light a candle to Mars, which I'm also going to do. So I'm going to just prepare the candle. I'm going to light it when Mars comes. Not going to say prayer here, but I've already said that. So we can welcome the day and welcome Mars into the day. Mars also likes fire. We light a candle for every planet. But then you can definitely say that Mars likes fire. And let's see where my candle's at. Okay. So I have to reconstruct the candle that broke to its pieces. So it has the thing that the metal that holds the candle. This is so beautiful, and I find that very lovely because I basically am putting together things that were segmented so that I can light this candle. I'm going to put it here. And yeah. And then I'm And funnily enough, I have a broken camera on my Mars altar. So we have 3 more minutes. You definitely want to clean the space for that. So you can soon have a Mars pair. So the first role of Mars is being direct. And again, any planet during its shake period, things can still go off. But this time, Mars direct will act. However, Mercury indirect reflects. So there is something of the action is something we'll still have to adjust. We do. Okay, so when the ruler of a direct planet is indirect, we also get the effects of the indirect. So even though Mars is turning direct, and everybody tells you, well, January 12th, Mars is going to go direct, and yeah, things are going to begin to go smoothly in your life. Mercury is retrograde. Okay, so any Mars action in a Gemini, in your Gemini house, is still during adjusting. Okay, there's a reason Mars spends so long in Gemini before an outer planet comes in. Okay, Mars spent, I think it was also close to like 6 months to 9 months in Aries during or before COVID, and COVID has to do also with Neptune. Okay, things the virus, and in 2 years we're going to have a Neptune ingressing into Aries. Okay, Saturn. You have Saturn in Aquarius. Has been in Aquarius for a while. Social distancing, so on and so forth, and we're preparing the show for Pluto to come in. Okay, so the inner planets that does the retrograde motion, the inner planets that stays there for a while, and then we have an outer planet coming in, and we can say this is blessed, we can say this is arranged, but we can also look at it and see what is coming. So if what is coming is a Uranus in Gemini, we definitely want to, there are certain actions that are not timely yet. Okay, it's not yet timely for each and every one of us to travel with a solar airplane that you drive yet, okay, with the car with wings, maybe, not yet timely. But when Uranus enters Gemini, you might think differently about that. Or it's not yet timely to talk about certain facets to do with certain medications, or the absence of those. But when Neptune hits Aries, we will be very vocal. So yes, Mars is turning direct, and there it is. So mind you, I will not say the blessing out loud. Okay. And Mars day, Mars hour. So the first thing, like I said, Mercury is still going to be retrograde. Then we have a period where Mars is undisturbed, and then Mars is going to square Neptune again, and that means there's a fated miss. Okay, it can also be an action that goes viral, and that's fated, because Neptune is also about things that go viral. So an act of speech goes viral, and that's fated, or something is missing. Okay, something you strategize to do something, and then something goes missing. Um, do pray for the children, because that can be child goes missing. Okay, or somebody tries to protect the child goes missing. So, um, like, I there's, the beautiful implications, and then there are also things that can happen. Um, and so what we can expect Mars from going direct is to prepare the ground for the times where we're going to be doing Uranus in this house for 7 years, 8 years. Um, yeah, the moon right now is in 0 degree Gemini. So the moon is very much perfecting this talk, and it's going to go over Mars. So during today or maybe this night, you're going to feel the effects of moon over Mars. Mars is not harshly aspected, it's just, a station in Mars in Gemini. And if it's happening in your sleep, then you might get dreams, or you might get your brain aligned, and you can come up with certain things, certain new insights about how to plan the course of actions, or what things need to be attended to or taken action to save, to govern, to save, to self-govern, that's Aries, and so on and so forth. Um, okay, so the moon is still separating from Pluto trine, Venus ingressed into Aquarius. Okay, so Venus ingressed into Aquarius, that's probably not make. Um, and the next stop, well, Mercury is great, but when it's going to go direct, it's going to also go through Pluto. And this is very important because Mercury, like I said, it rules not only agreements and arguments and tricksters, it also rules children. Who are the greatest tricksters? Children. Okay, we love them for being who they are. They adapt, they adjust, they grow, they try this thing, that thing, it doesn't work. So that facets of children also Mercury rules. And children in Saturn's governed sign. So children labor in agriculture, children labor in constructing buildings, children labor. Or yesterday I was even looking, and I bought me something for my nails. So I said I wanted to buy, like, have an infection in one of them, so I wanted to buy something that is for one-time use. And then I looked at it, and it only costed 1 shekel, and I looked at it, it was made in China, and I was like, okay, I need to question this product. I need to question this product. I need to question, what do I do, or how do I treat my nails in a way that does not involve a molestation of children, because child labor eventually is molestation of children. So it's like, oh, that's those little details that I didn't think about. Like, of course, I'm not very likely to continue to clean my nail with that. Like, some other solution has to be made that does not involve enslaving other people. That is absolutely not healthy for my nail as well. So it's like it's not just the self-interest, but also it's the understanding how these things are related. Okay, we want to build a house, so who are the construction workers? We recently had the World Cup. Okay, so many people got killed. Like, I think it was about 2,000 people that were killed during the construction of the stadium for where everybody celebrated the World Cup. It's like, okay, how are we still having a World Cup? Like, this is, but then you ask yourself, well, who built, the first thing I thought about when I heard this was the 9/11. I was like, okay, but who constructed the buildings of the Trade Center? Who knows how many people were dead by then? Like, it's easy to talk about what's going on over there, what's going on over here. We don't know. Many things that we need to understand. And Mercury retrograde in Capricorn is going to make sure we address, at least tend to at least become aware of all those things that are to do with legislation, with the structure, with agriculture as well. and rethink them and readjust them, even in the way we frame them, even if the way we talk about them, and even in broadcasts, what we into in our thinking, um, and so that when it goes direct and it goes over Pluto, it, then that will be the last bit of being very much informed the way Venus is, or Venus was. Okay, Venus continues on a new cycle in relation to her cycle with Pluto. So she's doing something new here that perhaps she's never tried before. Okay, she's now more informed about that conjunction with Pluto, and now she's doing something she's never tried before. Um, uh, 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 uh. So Pluto's still sitting pretty where it's at. In the sign that the moon rules, is Cancer, we currently have Black Moon Lilith sitting pretty in the 29th degree of Cancer. Still, I'm not sure I know how to delineate that, but we're gonna find probably many Liliths. Many people might discover their Liliths, or work with their Liliths, or have premonition as to what is to come for Lilith cycle. Um, and that's supposing that what's happening in Capricorn. So, Capricorn might be exposing some shit that somebody did, and Lilith says, well, you know what, this person that you thought was so good and so portraying whatnot, and that they're also that they're also harassed somebody sexually, or they also had misconduct, or so on and so forth. Um, on the other hand, Lilith can also say, well, this is that is something that I needed for my safety, or the need to feel safe, even sexually, like the need to feel safe in order to have sex. That can be something that Lilith in Cancer deals with. For example, the type of emotional care that you do need in order to have an orgasm. So again, I'm trying, it's very difficult for me. I have Cancer in the 5th, so it's very difficult for me not to be biased by the signification of the moon being at home with Cancer in the 5th, and then project, that on the world. Different people need different things, but definitely Lilith in Cancer accentuate. If Lilith is the raw desire or the body instinct, it accentuates the need in having emotional security, and the role of emotional security in those body instincts. So it can be something as simple as the emotional security that you need in order to have an orgasm, or the emotional or the way you adhere to your bodily instincts to get emotional security in life, or the way you listen to, because Lilith sexuality, listen to your sexuality and your sexual energy, telling you, discovering, unveiling things in your life, and tending to that. What turns you on? Okay, what turns you on? Maybe you should do that. What turns you on? What ignites you? This can also be that. Lilith is sextile in the moon, as oppositioning, because she was oppositioning Venus. Venus's conjunction with Pluto. So again, Lilith comes to tell us something. She comes to inform us from the body. Okay, if Venus was informing us from the rules and regulations in Capricorn, it's like, oh, these rules and regulations are not fair. And Lilith comes and say, well, yeah, and there are also these things that happen with the body, or these instincts of the body that you need to observe. It's not just the rules. Sometimes the rules are supposedly being respected, but if you listen to the instincts of your body, this is a perpetrator sitting there. And if I think about my episode on Monica Lewinsky, I was talking about, she was having an interview with Yonit Levy, and I discussed how it works in journalism. So if you would watch the interview, you would think that Yonit Levy is a bitch. But when we actually understand what's going on, we understand that the bitch is a man and it's upstairs as the editorial. And listening to my bodily instincts, I realized that what he did was a perpetrator, like there was sexual harassment that is not seen in any way, shape, and form. It's just a woman disrespecting another woman, and the editorial comment protects and said, no, Yonit Levy did not do anything to disrespect or did not cross any boundary. Well, the boundary was clearly stated. So, of course, and the boundary was around, an issue of sexual, sexual molestation that Bill Clinton did. So that is something that's not, even when I try to speak it in words, it's not easy to speak in words. Okay? But if you're there and you're attuned to your body, you understand what's going on in the mind of the crooked person. And this is important because the type of intuition that you can't always explain, that says, well, this is a person I don't want to work with. This is a person I don't listen to anymore. This is when Mars comes to sever ties with the unjust. This is a person I will not be relating with. And you can't really explain that to other people because, it's like gaslighting. It's done on a level that is not, okay? You find it difficult to show the invisible. So Lilith in Cancer does see the invisible. She is attuned to that which reaches the emotional safety, but also which reaches the boundaries. And as well, she's also aware of meeting a desirous nature. It's like, oh, this is where I felt safe. This is the place and the whereabouts that I felt safe. Or this is the emotional safety that I need to be sexual. And it's not something you can voice. It's something that you either feel or you don't feel. Okay? And it's another level, it's a more instinctual level of communication, of caring even. It's also instinctual care. Okay, it's the inner voice that tells you, well, no, don't address this child's concern just yet. Okay, allow them to process it with themselves, or the instinct that tells you, you should be getting there. You should be getting there. It doesn't seem like there's anything wrong. You should be getting there, and it can tell you how to care for someone as well. Because Cancer is also about caregiving, how to see something intuitively, how to see the mirror, the reflection of something, or what reflects what. It's omenology, okay? The omen, seeing an omen in things. This is also something that Lilith does. And in Cancer, it's about something emotional, it's about something related to the moon, or moon magic, any of that sort. You can feel that more intuitively. So, yeah. For people who have been listening, people who have menstruation, people who have been listening, my womb's been telling me, like, should take me to the supermarket. Like, no, we get that chocolate now, and I have to get it. And I always have to get it because it always seems so, we were trained to think so logically. Or she's take, like, the blanket that I put when I'm menstruating. It's like, we will still need this blanket. I'm like, but wait, but it's time. It's like, woohoo, you forgot. You're gonna. And so the body prepares, it has been ongoing for a couple of months, and that's beautiful. The body prepares you for what is to be. Like, this shows you this side, this side, this side. Like, and you find it difficult to believe because when you are in doing other things, you're like, wait, but I was menstruating like 2 weeks ago, wasn't that? Or did? But that's something that also, not only Lilith, but something that also Lilith does. It's like, hey, you're about to go bleeding. What are you doing? Why you're starting this project? You're about to go bleeding. You're gonna spend the time in bed, or bring me some freaking chocolates. Come on, what's going on with you? So that is also a Lilith thing. It's not only a Lilith thing, but it's also part of how you can feel Lilith. You can have this reconnection with your womb, regardless of your gender, that tells you, well, darling, it's time to get, the chocolate bars and the black blankets and everything that we have going on, and it's time to, go. It's time to not commit yourself to any intense occupation in the coming week. So that's another Lilith Cancer. But the 29th degree is, again, Lilith is seeing something of the future, something that's happening in the future, something that could be happening in the future, such as premonitions regarding to something. And we'll wait for the moon to go over Lilith to attract that and to see that. And those premonitions are counterintuitive to what we see with the Pluto Venus. Okay, there's certain things that are counterintuitive to what we see with the Pluto Venus. In what way? We don't know. But it may, if you have insight into this transit, then you're very welcome to record your own video and to record a video reaction to this video, and I will gladly watch it. So yes. Anything more about this turning direct? Well, I named this episode of Mars turning direct in Gemini, Insights and Opportunities. Like, I think, do I have the name? No. So what are the opportunities? Well, there are opportunities to act, there are opportunities to understand things, there are opportunities to fix things, and the opportunities are basically related to your vision. Why am I saying that? Simply because the nodes are going to go from Taurus to Aries. The eclipses are going to be on Aries. There's a Mars ruled sign. Okay. Mars is already going to be in Cancer. So it's time to tend to your visions, to your Mars related visions, and how that Gemini house plays a role in these Mars related visions. Okay. And those Mars related visions are to your Aries house. So let's say I want to have, to grow a business, and I'm still considering what kind of business. Is it a social, is it a podcast business? Do I want to sell some, actual things? How do I adjust for my clients and so on and so forth? Will I be working from home? Okay, and then I have Aries in my second house, Mercury in my fourth house. Okay, will I be working from home? Will my business be from home? If we are getting local, if we're getting localized, should I be thinking about moving to a place where I can go local with my business, and not just international? How much will that play a role, at least in the beginning years of what I will start, from now, the adjustments that I'll make from now. So it can be, let's say, your seventh house and your ninth house. Yeah, let's say Aries is your seventh house and Mars is your ninth house, to make you ascendant Libra. Then that can be something to do with your partners, and maybe your partner is moving to another country or going to study in another country. Or maybe you think to go to study in another country, and maybe it's there when you will meet your partner, or you will meet your partner and then, okay, well, where are we going to live? Are we going to live abroad to me, or are we going to live abroad to you? Okay, if you're not from the same country. And Mercury there is doing the legislation stuff. Okay, Mercury now in Capricorn. So what does it mean? What does it mean about the children? What is that contract? Is this contract? I addressed it when I did Venus at Capricorn. So there will be some opportunities presenting themselves. And these are opportunities that have something to do with either your Aries or Scorpio house. But because I talk about opportunities, I talk about the Aries house. Okay, it's ruling the Aries house. So there's some opportunity. It can be an opportunity to renovate the house. Okay, if it's fourth house, like to fix something, to fix this, to fix that, and you're being told, oh, you can fix this, you can fix that, then you have to look at the contract, have to look at the words and so on, the wording and so on. Or alternatively, it can be, well, you have a chance to move to another area. Okay, or you have a chance to buy a house in this area. Have a chance to buy a house in this area. And you have to think about, okay, we'll have to think about the agreement. Think about the mortgage, Mercury and Capricorn. Think about the mortgage. What kind of agreement is good for you? Then you might not want to sign right away. and so on and so forth. So you might be considering stuff, and then you find out, oh, this deal when Mars reaches, oh, actually, wonder, yeah, I can talk about it. Let's talk about Victor had something like that. That a deal, a real estate deal, we have the same ascendant, a real estate deal fell, and he needed compensation. Okay, and he got his compensation. Somebody tried to trick him in real estate, and he got his lawyers got his compensation. So it could be something like that. Okay, he was trying to do the deal before Mercury turns retrograde, but Mercury was very much in its shade period, and somebody flipped the details, and they were trying to trick him. It seems from what he's writing, I'm not sure that's the case, but maybe somebody was trying to sell the same apartment twice, and then they told him that the deal dropped, but they will not pay compensation for what he invested or something like that. They have to pay compensation for him because he already like invested in serving that, had to pay lawyers, had to do, polls and something like, you have to have reports. So when you buy real estate, basically depending on the country, you have to give a report. If you buy land, then you need to give a report. There are certain mandatory reports that you have to give to even apply to buy that land. So that costs money, and so he needed the compensation. You're entitled, you need to check the rules, but you're entitled to compensation if that deal fails. Okay? So they didn't want to give him his compensation, but he was smart enough and he had good lawyer, so he managed to go through that. And that is a very Martian way of dealing with agreements. Okay, it's a dispute. Okay, it's not just something fell off in the agreement, there's a miscommunication, there's a dispute. Okay, there's maybe not necessarily somebody tries to trick somebody, although it can be with agreements. In this case, it definitely was, even to the point that like maybe they were trying to sell the same apartment twice, maybe not, I don't know. But anyway, they had to compensate people for saying, oh, you got the deal right, and then you think you have a deal, and then of course you say, I'm going to buy this house, and then you stop looking in other places. For a while, for a couple of days, and you need to get compensated for your money, for your time that you could have been dedicated in other business deals. So I think to do a separate video about real estate and some scams in real estate that is not necessarily only astrology related, because many people are trying, it's not to say that there are no good opportunities during a crisis. Okay, and sometimes if the family, let's say the family got into debt and they sell the house and they have housing, they will have housing from this deal, so you will cover their debts if they sell it, and they might buy a smaller house that they can buy in cash. They're not like in the street or in rent that they're going to be in the street any moment. So then you could be saving the family. Okay, you could be saving, like, yes, you buy the house, for you it's a deal, for them it's a lifesaver, they'll be living in a smaller house, but like it's still okay, like they'll have housing, they'll have the basis, they'll have what they need, that's a deal. But if they'll be evacuated, you damn right be sure they're gonna come for this property, because this is war crimes. To evacuate somebody from their housing because of financial crisis that happens because of a war, this is war crimes. Okay, and yes, I'm very much aware of which country am I broadcasting this from. It's true to any country and all of our countries. Okay, that's if we talk about not only European conflicts and Middle East being covered. So how many people are entitled to properties in China, for example, Russia, and so on and so forth. So another trick we have is we have people trying to sell the same property twice, and we have Ponzi-like schemes, and another form of Ponzi-like schemes, and I will talk about it more in a separate video, I think, is the type of scheme that you're like, oh, invest in Section 8. And what you don't know is that Section 8 consists of people who probably have some sort of trauma or complex trauma due to financial crisis, but sometimes due to war, sometimes it's veterans. And the political culture where they live, the United States, is not ready to understand what is CPTSD and what it takes to recover. So they give them houses for 9 months, and then they have to go find another company or another house. And of course, you cannot heal
complex trauma in 9 months. You've got people dealing with that for decades, okay, healing that for decades, even when they work, even when they do make money, even when they do have, like artists who have shows or so on and so forth, um, they're still dealing with that. So you can't expect them to just, get a job and, whoa, everything is going to be okay. Like, they just had a crisis. No, they had a political, cultural crisis. And sometimes are victims of violence and so on and so forth. So when you say something like that to someone, they have no longer power to do that anything. And of course, your property can be damaged. And of course, you're dealing with a situation that you don't even know. You think you're helping people, but what you're not speaking up for what they need to live there. You're not speaking up for your tenants. You're not speaking up for your tenants staying there. And you're not speaking up for the rules. And if this is your property, you make money out of it, you should be the first to speak up for them. Because people do need housing, and they do need housing first. But you don't cure CPTSD in 9 months. Today, at least, like you don't have a magical, pill that can cure that, unfortunately. And no, they did not get to this situation by making poor choices. But society did make poor choices when they chose to isolate them in that way. That makes it even more difficult to recover. And so, if you could be investing in this, section, I'm an Israeli. I get offers to invest in Section 8 in the United States. Because you also need to be aware of that. If you're a tenant, if you're needing, if you're going to the quest for a Section 8. Anything that you have to do in the property is on you, and boy, will you have to do things in the property. Boy, will you have to do things in the property. If somebody is afraid that they're going to be evacuated and they lost power to fight, if they're going to try to hurt themselves, and they do, it's in your property. Okay, and this is important because you're being, and then you're forced to sell. So this is what happens not only with Section 8, but with many properties that are marketed as your tenants will pay your mortgage. If you're taking a mortgage because you have the money in the bank, but you don't want to loosen up the money, and you can pay for that mortgage in cash, but you don't want to loosen up that money, so you do it with debts, and then you're increasing your credit score, and you could pay that. Like worst case scenario, you'll pay that, you live that, you let your daughter, your family live that. It's not a big loss for you. Then okay, like be aware of that. But this video is not necessarily for you. I know of people who don't have money and build up some credit score. They take a loan with the promise that the tenant will pay it, and they don't have the cash to pay it themselves. They don't take that into account. I literally seen cases all over, even in Israel. Somebody's trying to think about what will be the income from their business, and they took the income of the tenants that are currently paying them so and so. And I was like, dude, these tenants are like, that property is your expenses, it's not yet your income. Okay, if you have a mortgage, that property, doesn't matter if there's a tenant living there, the property is your expenses, it's not just your income. Okay, don't listen to everything that the bank says. The bank can be bailed out from a poor decision that they make, but they're going to frame it as a poor decision that you made, and you'll be in the street trying to buy a house. Okay, that is something that, as you noticed, unnerves me. We're looking at the Mars altar being, and so people are marketed that your tenants. But what happens? You buy through a company, because of course you do. You buy through a company, and the company says, we'll take care of everything. 2 or 3 months from that, you get screwed on, and you need to sell. And they know what they're doing, because they take a solid investment, okay, a solid, safe, long-term investment, and that is housing. If you have a house next to a university, if you have a house next to, I don't know, a touristic center, if you have a house in the city, in a central place, that you think, oh, somebody can rent it. Somebody can rent it, somebody can decide if they want to live in the area, but you have places where people live in rent for years, I mean decades. Okay, this is a solid investment. This is how you were sort of a kind of a meant to do real estate. So people can be living in rent for years, and then they're saving to buy a house, and until they decide where to buy the house, they're living here, and then they live in there, and then they see, like, do I want to raise my children here? This is good reasoning to do rent. Okay, you take a rented property, you stay in the neighborhood, you stay in the city, and you check what it's like before you buy a property there. That makes sense. Okay, to live a year or two in a place before you invest in a property, and meanwhile you're saving the money. That's a good deal, but that's not what's happening. What's actually happening, and if you are the type of person who decides, well, I'm sick of being ripped off, I want to take a loan and buy a house and the tenants will pay my rent, you're like, well, you're just doing what you don't like be done to you, to another person. Why do you think that they will not rebel or revolt against that action? Okay, if they're not able to realistically buy property themselves, or get something, invest in some business, or do something themselves. And so people are being lied to, and the commodity that is basic, that's supposed to be long-term investment, that is solid, that is safe, becomes a very speculative stock. And people flip houses, okay? Flipping properties, properties that people live in rent, not as vacation, not as Airbnb, not as, I don't know, business tourism, as a house. Okay, there's a limit for how much people can tolerate this being so unnerved without taking mass action. Okay, so if you're putting your money there, then just be conscious, because you might even be you might even be the class that, or the Pluto generation that had a safe job and that had safe income, and you saved your money, and you think, well, I'm going to rent this to younger people, and they're going to save their money, and they're going to buy an apartment while they progress in life. And you could be a good person, and you've marketed a business to say, well, did you know that your tenants can pay the rent, and you're investing your savings in there, thinking that you're doing a good deal for yourself and for the people for your clients, that your tenants. And that's being marketed as, well, they're going to pay the rent. They have their interest. They're just growing. They're just learning. They're just going to learn about the property and so on and so on. They're going to live there. It's a fair deal. And you're going to get, another property, and they're going to pay for that property. All the while, they're saving for their own properties. So that might not seem, a crazy idea to you. But what you don't know, that you're not ready for, is that you're dealing with people who flip houses, and you're investing money. Then you have to flip the house because you got to invest too much in the property. Then the other person renovates and invests into property, thinking like you, it's going to be a long-term investment. Then they flip the house on them. Okay, then they take care of the property in such a way that you are forced to sell it. And so the company that flips the houses, flips it again and again and again and again. You get many people investing in this property, raising the value of this property, constantly renovating this property. They don't waste any money of their own. Okay, you just keep flipping houses, keep flipping houses, keep flipping houses. Nobody lives there. Nobody lives there for long. Nobody can afford to live there for long. And so you have empty houses that everybody pays on and everybody buys as properties. Okay, that's the house. That's the Ponzi housing scheme, and so that's yet another thing. So if you have any of these related to your, so if you have, let's say, a real estate deal falling. It could be that whether Neptune or I don't know what, if it's going to be the square with Neptune, because you're going to be offered something, and you're going to check the things and check the papers and check this and check that and say, well, okay, I've got it arranged, I'm going to buy this property. But then Neptune comes in and the deal falls, the square with Neptune comes in and the deal falls, and you're like, damn, what happened? Listen to Shirley Young's Spirit of Matter and know what happened. What happens that you've been almost Ponzi scheme, but there was the hand of God interfering and taking that deal away from you because you're a good person, or because it's not for you to get, not bad things happen to good people, but because it was not your time, it was not your divine intervention, that you will be of the people who fall in that Ponzi scheme, because maybe you can't do anything about it, and some other people can do something about it. So they might fall, like they might only be interested if they fall in this Ponzi scheme, and then they'll act on it from a personal motive, and then they'll be unstoppable. Okay, so. And that's going to be a mass of people. So if a real estate deal falls, if you didn't win this argument, if something, you wanted to speak up something and that fell, it's either not timely or you're not being recruited. Think about, you're not being recruited to the army. In Israel, we have that. So, it's a mandatory army, but it doesn't recruit about half of the people who are at the age of being recruited. And some people are like, oh, damn, I was not recruited to the army. I was not this, I was not that. And they're like, well, you just dodged the sexual harassment, or you just dodged your death, or you just dodged trauma, or you just dodged this war that was not for you to fight. You will be recruited to some other struggle, to some other thing, to some other outer planet work. And that's okay. Like, these things happen too. Yeah, I recently spoke about my when I began to study versus when I actually finished the degree, and that was due to money reasons. I was like, why don't I have the money? I was 20, 21, 22. Like, why don't I have the money? Why don't I have the money? And then when I actually went to do the second degree, I was Me Too case before the Me Too, Me Too case. So it was TA3 courses. Then one of them was a Me Too case. So I wasn't recruited. And the first degree that I started was English literature and filmmaking. Okay, and I sat in the class with one person that I know is a sexual offender today. I didn't know, and I was voluntarily sitting in this class. Okay, today I know he's a sexual offender. So that, I was too young for that. I was not, I had a role to play, and that role I played when I was 32. When I could talk about the relation between the army, private sectors, the academia, the way the system works, the patriarch, when I say patriarch, I mean church patriarch, governing of certain body institutions like academic institutions, how people who are trained to be politicians are trained in academic institutions that belong to the church, basically. The structure is still from the church. And so you're being trained to do democracy. How can you sustain a democracy, even the things that the good things that democracy can do? How can you sustain a democracy when you're not practicing democracy in your studies of how to be a politician, okay, or how to do politics and governance? So that was definitely not something I was ready to say at 22, studying filmmaking. And so with the Mars that's about to square Neptune, you could have a thing like that. Something falls, a real estate deal falls over, or maybe it can be that you don't get public housing because this is Gemini is ruling societies, ruling public things, or something about transportation, public transportation. Maybe you're in a new village and the public transportation to your house doesn't arrive so much, so you can't work, and so you realize, oh, you've just dodged, a sexist boss or something, or you just dodged a job that you would take your time where you need to be doing other things, or you just dodged a real estate deal that is a Ponzi scheme. Okay, that can be the type of things that fall. But in any case, when that square to Neptune does happen, it usually means that, well, at that point, it's very unnerving. At that point, it's very unnerving. At that point, it's like, oh my gosh, I've lost this battle. Okay? But there's a reason for that. Okay? Neptune is an outer planet. You either lost this battle because the battle was way too big and somebody else has to fight it, or the way that you lost this battle will be exposed, or what's missing there will be further exposed, and then you were trying to tackle it at soul level, at this level and not at the pinnacle level. So but then you're freaking tired because you went all this level, so somebody's going to go to the pinnacle level, but you will no longer have to be the one fighting, or you could be of help to that person who does do that. Other things that are opportunities. So there's opportunities that happen. There are small wins, a lot of small wins, arguments, and Mars is going to go over Rohini Nakshatra again, over Aldebaran again, and Aldebaran is that win when Mercury is retrograde. Okay, so it's an inner reflection. And sometimes the argument you have with yourself is also important. Okay, sometimes to advocate for you within you is also important. To understand, okay, it is also important. And a lot of people are not aware of what those who seek to sever ties with the unjust and to do that which is right, to act for what is right, they don't always understand the trials and tribulations that these people go through. Sometimes constantly questioning themselves, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right thing? Did I go too far with that action? Did I go too far? Like, this is also Mars. Okay, when Mars is reflective, Mars is not just, a raging bully. It reflects on its nature. It reflects on the nature of its violence, on the nature of the way that they're doing things, when it should when and with whom and to what extent and in what way should we exert aggression. So yeah. So with Mars on Aldebaran again, Mars being on Aldebaran again, with Mercury retrograde, I expect there to be some new information coming up regarding legislation, regarding the systems, regarding regimes. And it can seem like the Mercury retrograde also finds things that are missing. Something was missing around your house, something goes missing, Mercury might find it, or Mercury might keep things away, okay, get things away from you. Like, let's say there's a problem, let's say, with your phone, and there's something you wanted to say, and you're not saying it just yet because it's not timely. It's not timely to say it just yet. Okay? Or you'll be framed in a certain way if you say it now, but 2 years from now, if you'll be saying that, you say, oh, this is the brave person that was trying to say this, but their phone went off. This is the brave voice that speaks up, when if you spoke up 2 years ago, you would be like, oh no, you should jail this person, this is a traitor, this is that. So that can be another thing with Mercury retrogrades, and because this is the discussion is about Saturn fashioned things, also agriculture becomes a heated discussion, right? What is CO2 emission? Okay, what do plants breathe? Plants breathe CO2 and they excrete oxygen. So what they excrete is what we inhale, and what we excrete is what they inhale. So obviously our CO2 emission is not a problem. Okay, we fart carbon, okay. But that carbon has to be tied in with oxygen. And that carbon is tied in with oxygen when you have enough trees. Okay? So this carbon emission, I'm not saying carbon emission or like bad levels of carbon are not something that's problematic, but the solution is more trees. Okay? The problem of factories is not that they emit carbon, it's that they emit a shitload of toxic stuff to the environment and to people, but they're not being targeted. Who's being targeted? You. While you farting person who's going on a walk in nature, don't do that. You have carbon stamps. Okay? Carbon ties in with oxygen, and this is what trees fart. Okay? When a tree farts, it farts oxygen, and you get 2 of these with carbon. So all you need to have is more trees, okay, twice the time the trees than the people walking in them. less time to trees than the people walking in them. And there are factories and other things that are creating air pollution. It's making it difficult for anyone. We get our oxygen, but we also get plenty of other stuff that are causing all kinds of tumors and stuff that have a solution for, but you're not being marketed at that solution because the money for the research suddenly abruptly falls through. And that is, that's just something that happens. So you think, oh, the people do not invest enough in research. It cannot be that we didn't find solutions to cancer just yet, and blah blah blah. It's like, yes, they invest, and yes, we have found, but no, it's not like they decide to abrupt them, and to continue on other things that are less useful. Okay, so there is always a question of economy relating to everything. It doesn't make a thing a conspiracy theory. It doesn't make people mean. Also, when you do filmmaking, there are the films you can do, you have funding for, and the people want to see, and the films that you cannot do because who is going to watch that experimental video, that blah blah blah, and you need to find a way to combine them. Okay, how am I being economic and delivering a message? Okay, how do I join these things? So it's the same for any field, including medicine. Yeah. So anything more with this Mars stationing? Wars in the media. Again, that can be a coverage in the media. Somebody tries to cover something, or they're more aware of what they should be covering, but that coverage falls through, and there will be a reason for that. So January 12th is where Mars is turning direct. Up until January 12th is where you gather both the information and the emotion, okay, the drive. And then after such a long retrograde, you'll be very likely to want to act, and you'll be very likely to act. The things that are going to fall through with Mercury being retrograde are fated, especially in these times, especially when the nodes are about to hit the Mars ruled sign. Okay, so there's a context to this. Okay, there's Mars ruled by Mercury. There's Chiron and Jupiter in the house where Mars is ruling, in the house and in the sign where Mars is ruling, that being Aries. There's the nodes about to turn into Aries. There's Uranus about to go into Gemini, Neptune about to go into Aries. There are all these things happening. Okay, so Mars is going to play. With any nodes or eclipses happening on a Mars-ruled sign, so the way we see Mars and Venus are going to transform, are going to change of view. Okay, Sun and Moon, they rule the eyes. It's how we see things. So the way that we see Mars, the way that we see things related to Mars, the way that we see even what Mars is doing right now, because there's a history, there's a genealogy to that, then we've been letting go of certain views of Mars, and this is Mars in Scorpio. Okay, certain views of the ways I can think about in last year we had the Me Too wave regarding psychotherapy and the conventional psychotherapy. And then there was an attempt, or there still are ongoing attempts, to frame this as, oh, the psychotherapists, the people are not trained well, people don't go to the academia, so they don't have the degree, and they don't know how to treat a patient. This opens, a room for charlatans, which was a good argument if Pluto was anywhere else other than, the Sagittarius or Capricorn. There's actually a good argument for Pluto and Aquarius, because Aquarius is mass wisdom. So if that would be in the context of Pluto and Aquarius, then I would say, well, yeah, that's the problem is maybe that they don't have training, and so you don't have anybody to regulate that. But here the problem is not that you don't have anybody to regulate that, it's that you can speak up against some, charlatan who doesn't have or against someone who's a practitioner who doesn't have academic, papers. But the people who did and were trained in academia, okay, who exposes them? Okay, what happens when they commit offense? Who can speak up against them? Okay, what's going on with this system? And so psychotherapy is very much, and also brain surgery, and also certain medications, especially to do with penetrative things, so vaccine medication. So we've been letting go of our old view of, you know, the doctor knows, the doctor does what's good for you. Some of us have had old doctors that we had to part ways with because those doctors were good up to then, but then when came, you know, what's happening in the past 2 years, then, you know, you see that your doctor is either bound by something or they're bound to an old view and they don't see what's happening and they don't see that they harm patients, holding the views that they have. So they're not necessarily being bad people, but these are no longer people who can relate. You have to let go of the brain surgeon, the psychotherapist, also the shamanic guru as well. So it's both the psychotherapist who has learned in the academy and got degrees, but what did they learn? The same thing that you do outside of academia, because the history of uh, um, psychology is very much to do with ancient cultures. Okay, think about Jung. Jung is taken from other, you know, from Eastern cultures, the yin yang and so on and so forth, and adapted in the framework and within the blind spots that he had, you know. So we were forced to let go, especially because it's happening on a mass scale. Many people needed psychotherapy. Many people are discovering that psychotherapy does not have something to give them when it comes to trauma. They don't know what to do. They don't understand what's going on. The rehabilitation is not working. We had to let go of our view. Okay. And because it was keto there, so it's letting go of the role. The people who play those scorpionic roles, we had to let go of them. Or so certain countries, here scorpionic ruled countries, that we thought were going, you know, you think we're going to save the world. There's not, or save Europe. There's not, you know, playing this role, or we have to let go of them being the hope for order and rehabilitation of something. With Libra, we have to let go, and this is a very important one for the nodes turning, you know, to the Libra Aries axis. We have to let go of the role judges, diplomats, and traders have to offer in sustaining the world. And this is going to be so for up to the next 9 years, because the nodes, they flip around every 9 years, so they have a return every 18 years. Okay, this literally is. So if we had to fight, you know, for example, I think 2021 or 2022, the most chosen word, I don't know, like a worded word, was gaslighting. Who was talking about gaslighting before that? Some small support groups, maybe, okay? So people learn what is gaslighting is an offense tactic that is subversive, that is hidden, is very much scorpionic, okay? And so, again, Scorpios, like the Scorpio is not only those subversive, like I said, it's severing ties with the unjust. And when it's not, you know, part of severing ties with the unjust is identifying gaslighting. It's identifying the subversive tactics that the unjust can play, and the way children or people or those who are the helpless are not being protected. Is also the severing ties with those who deem those who are able to help themselves as unable to help themselves, not in the not assisting or not helping, but more like if a person wants to do something for themselves, then not blocking it, not allowing that. Actually, one of the people um, who were running for governors, Yair Lapid in Israel, has a son who is neurodivergent, and his party was supporting um, private housing for people who are neurodivergent on the autistic spectrum and are functioning. So have them have private housing, have them have private places that where they have autonomy and they can live a full life and not be subjected to molestation and abuse in the existing structures. Huh? And so that was one of the things, and then he was Scorpio's son. So it's like letting go of the idea that they constantly need help, that they constantly need to be protected, that they constantly need to be supervised, that they constantly need to be maneuvered psychologically. Okay, letting go of that. And then it was more towards self-sustainability. Okay, Uranus in Taurus and people thinking of growing land and growing crops when the weather is crazy. This was unpredictable, but it was also kind of very interesting, and still is interesting. So growing your own food, having your own property, your own house, having material assets. You understood the role of material assets, and you let go of the role of psychotherapy in there. Because yes, we all need somebody to understand and delve into what keeps us, what blocks us, what is. And sometimes what blocks us is we don't have a house. Sometimes what blocks us is that we don't have our own yard. And now that we understand what to do with that, or what is the role that matter plays in our spirit, then we strive for that. We want to have, a wealthy bank account. We want to have a wealthy yard with growing crops and beautiful plants and biodivergent ecosystems and so on and so forth. We want to have a property of our own. We want to have a cozy home, okay, to retreat to. We're not so minimalist anymore, okay, because Scorpio is minimalist. We understand that not being a minimalist is not necessary. It's good to be able to let go of something. It's also good to be able to come back to the things that you didn't know if you would see again. It can be your stuffy, it can be your crystals, it can be your old clothes, whatnot, and you understand the emotional connection that those things provide and the comfort that those things provide. The comfort that the onesie provides to you when you're displaced in somewhere and like all you have for home is a onesie. Okay, so or the importance that to make something your home, even if it is a shelter, to ask for the things that make something cozy is important. So those things that are material gained power. And you also understand the role of diplomacy. So with Taurus, you could still be diplomatic. You're like, okay, now I understand. This is what I need. I do need this matter. I do need those things. And you spoke. Venus is speaking. You were speaking about it. You were talking about it. You were singing about it, speaking about it, speaking in the reality into being, creating about it, painting it, and so on and so forth. The meaning of the nodes Rahu being in Aries, okay, if you can think that's going to be 2023, 2024, and so 2025. So we had that 9 years ago. Let's say 2020, that would be around, if I'm not mistaken, around the Arab Spring. I know, I don't remember the transits that were mentioned in relation to the Arab Spring. So that is where people say, well, war is the continuation of diplomacy by other means. This is the time because Venus Libra or Libra axis, Libra Ketu, represents that which we let go of, and Libra is Libran figure, so it's the diplomat, it's the judge. Okay? So to sustain our self-sovereignty, we can no longer go to the role of judges, to the role of diplomats to protect us. We have a lot of refugees around the world. They will have to let go of the hope that judges will help them. They will have to let go of the hope that diplomats will help them. Okay, when we're moving more towards the type of army, I'm not going to say guerrilla because it's not necessarily guerrilla. Okay, some of the people who have been very Martian have been militants. They've been, working in a proper army. But definitely, people do apply to the army, to armed forces, to save them, to protect them. And to sustain them and to sustain themselves on. So people reverting to armed forces, to armed battles to sustain their sovereignty, okay, to claim their sovereignty, to sustain their sovereignty, and Mars Aries, okay, it's an explosive power. It's the type of power that the person has will ignite something new. This would be a good time to start a business. Okay, if you're just an entrepreneurship, if you have it in your entrepreneurship house or related to your entrepreneurship house, one of these could be a good time. Would be you're starting a business. It's a new form of income that you're doing. Now you're starting a business, and the amount of explosive power you will have with that, and it's not easy for me reading that because this is my second house of assets and skills. But the amount of aggression or the engine roll that you will have with that is going to be tremendous. Okay, you're starting something with this burst in spirit, and that's going to be, these ignitions are going to be, along with the transits and so on and so forth. So if you feel something not really happening, not really flying, not really going, not really moving forward, so you can join Saturn reaching Pisces in March and Pluto in Aquarius and the nodes on Aries with the Aries E, people are going to say, I'm going to be sovereign by any means necessary. Okay, so this is not a good time to call out the sovereignty of someone. This is not a good time if you want to keep your head straight, if you want to keep your head. It's not a good time to question somebody's identity. Okay, it's good to reflect on your own identity, but it's not a good time to repress or go against somebody's identity, somebody's self-definition. If somebody comes to you and says, I am the spirit of the winds, the star of the night, don't dare to question their identity. Because what seems like, oh, this is so weird, this is so strange, this is what has happened with you? They're going, the waves of the stars and the waves of the sea are going to come and attack you in forced arms because you question their identity. This is not a day, this is not a time, this is not a zeitgeist to upset anybody with disrespecting who they are. Okay, we're heading the big I am. And Mars Gemini, right now the context for that, what the ruler of this upcoming eclipse series is doing, we're letting go of the psychoanalysis delving into the depths of which has its place and role in the world and is very important. But right now it has served this role, and we're letting go for the next 9 years, or now almost 8 years, we're letting go of the role of the deep psychoanalytic delving into the person and finding who that was, or definitely pathologizing an identity. Okay, anybody who was pathologizing an identity, this is a good time to repent. For example, even something like a narcissistic abuse. So I was one of the voices who brought data about what I considered narcissistic abuse, but I also called myself borderline when I did that, because I thought, I was a borderline that was attracted to a narcissistic person. It was like, we both have CPTSD. And so this would be a good time to take the good things, to protect yourself from behaviors that you is like, to understand what is gaslighting, to understand what the behavior, what the dynamic is, how do you call for healthy relationship dynamics in your life. But this is not the time for me. And I'm speaking as a person who has changed their voice around that simply because I was acknowledging that, hey, I'm not a borderline, and that person who's misbehaving is not a narcissist. They're just a person who's behaving in a way that is not acceptable to me. And if I need to protect myself against that, I will protect myself against that. And so the naming or pathologizing somebody's identity now is not the time. It was the time 9 years ago. Okay, nine years ago, it was the time to say, well, okay, what affects my personality is this and that pathology. Okay, here is how I tend to that, how I do radical acceptance so that I will not be borderline, or, with narcissistic people, or what we consider deemed narcissistic people, then to identify that this is a person who is acting this way. So say, oh, this narcissist person, and now it's not the time for that. It's time to move on. It's like, okay, this is a human being. You're a human being. They will define themselves whichever they like. Nobody defines you for you. Okay, you're the one who defines who you are. Probably you both are dealing with something psychological, but then there is behavior, there is the new, there is opening up to new ways of behavior, there is understanding what you need to behave correctly. Okay, there's them understanding what they need to behave correctly, but anyway, they cannot molest you, right? They cannot interfere with your boundaries, they must respect your boundaries, and so on and so forth. So we're going away from pathology to autonomy. Okay, so your self-sovereignty matters. And this would be a good time around that. Also, when I think about the sex wars discourse, at least in Israel, there was like, instead of calling somebody a whore, there was a name that was attached to the people who consume sex work. And that was good for a while, but now it's like, no, we're people, you're people. It's just like that behavior is not acceptable. Breaking the boundaries of a woman sexually is not acceptable, whether she's a sex worker or not a sex worker. That's not acceptable. Okay, if you don't have a way to discern that you're not going to a girl that's being molested and kidnapped to have sex with her and pay money for someone to have sex with her, then you're a part of the problem and not a part of the solution. Okay? We don't have to call each other by name, we just have to set boundaries to that behavior. So that would be a more correct thing to do right now, is to respect identity, not to make it an identity issue, but talk about the way of someone and the right of someone to have self-sovereignty, because that's where we're going. Okay, so this is a time to let go of the old methods in which, okay, for example, if you've been pathologized, they say, okay, now I'm pathologizing that who is pathologizing me. Also with what we used to call narcissists, the problem was that they would do gaslighting, they would make you think you're crazy. So you found a definition in the DSM for the people who make you think you're crazy, they are narcissists. Okay? That was good tactic back then, but it is no longer valid now. You have to change the tactic with the time. Now what matters is self-sovereignty. Okay, focus on your self-sovereignty, your own definition. You define who you are, nobody defines for you who you are. I really love the Tom Jacobs. If you watch Tom Jacobs, I haven't even had my morning cup of water. If you watch Tom Jacobs, and I think about it during the Jupiter hour. So this is a good time to take in some new vitamins. Let's have my vinegar, spark of vinegar, maybe a spark of lemon. It's also a good time to make tea, but I'll just have my vinegar water. I have Pluto sitting pretty. Pluto, thank you, Pluto. Thank you, Pluto. I was just thinking about drinking just my vinegar water. And Pluto sitting pretty on the vinegar reminded me maybe it's a good time to prepare Thieves Blend. If you don't know what Thieves Blend is, it's Thieves vinegar. You can look that up. And it's also a good time to paint. So I just put down the Pluto page from my vinegar and down to paint. So let's take some colors and begin to paint. And now it's sitting pretty on my sponge where I'm supposed to clean stuff. And I know what that means. So I'm ready to paint, huh? So let's do some Mars painting. I need a cup for the water. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I need to clean that cup for the water. And already I used the spongy thing. Yeah. So, where were we? Um, just want to clean my cup. I know I saw it somewhere, probably on the Mars stand. Oh no, okay. I got it. Okay, so turning the water on so I can clean something. And meanwhile, I'll just use something else in paint. Still want to drink? Okay, this is good water. Is it? Lavender. Oh, I need to have tinctures. Wonder if it's a good day to have tinctures. You need to buy alcohol for that. Okay. Water first, then I'll think about everything else. Okay. So, there's me having my first cuppa of vinegar. Yeah. So, what else were we talking about? Why is this Monday? Tuesday. Is this still moon? We just were in a Mars, our Mars day. Is that a Mercury doing its thing? Because yesterday was a moon day, but now we're in 7:52 and this is not the hour. It's not refreshing. It's not refreshing. Okay. That is strange because I usually work with these astral clocks, but it's not refreshing, so we'll just go to the current planets. Yeah, Sunday. Sun hour, sorry. The sun hour, and the sun squares Chiron. Oh well. I think I kind of rambled enough about Mars and other things. Identity. So, yeah, this would not be a good time to question somebody's identity or to formulate arguments regarding someone's identity. And you might be tempted to do so because of the transits, okay, because Mars is going direct and is in the Mercury sign. So Mercury is the reframe, flip it and reverse it, and there is a Chiron around somebody's identity. So you might be tempted to frame someone's identity. Also, I'm wondering because Aries is about the self, we could be talking about shaming people for who they are, or how we frame people. Kind of, it's a good time to change your strategy from pathologizing somebody's identity, which was a response to victim blaming, to framing, certain minorities or marginalized societies or racists, or pathologizing people. And so the reaction, the scorpionic reaction was, so this is a narcissist, and this is, consumes sex work. So there was like a name for them that's bashing. and this is a rapist, and this is a this, and this is a that. So I might think that the strategy might change for the self-sovereignty of people, um, and and it will have to be a change that happens like hands-on, so not so much laws, not so much relying on laws and regulations in the first 9 years. So it's going to be a cycle of 9 years. And you know what? I'm going to turn this off, or should I do it in the same video? Because I think I spoke about the nodes turning to Libra. You know what? Let's start another video. Oh, and of course you can subscribe to me and so on and so forth. It's Mars Wisdom.